Hi, and welcome to Fawns and Porter's Dream Big Block of the Month with these lovely Hoffman fabrics. Thank you for joining me. My name is Jenny K. Parks. If you want to know more about me, you can check out my website, jennykquilts.com, or you can find me on YouTube. Today, we're going to talk about the Double Aster block. Now, we've been tackling some stuff that's a little bit unique. For one, all of these blocks so far have come together and needed a partial seam. And hopefully you've gotten a good handle on that. I'm going to review a little bit of that when I put this together. I just want to make sure you understand and that it's working well for you. Okay, so here is our Double Aster block. And we're just going to go ahead and jump right in. So it's going to come in several different units, of course, like we always do, right? Like each one before. So here's an example of the different units that they go together. So this is one unit segment, so you can kind of imagine that in your mind. We're going to make it in several different parts. So let me show you. Let me slide both these off here. All right. The first one we're going to make, and again, I have to have a guide. I have to have something I can look at, so I'm making sure I'm not getting upside down, backwards, and reversing, and having to rip it all out. Because, I mean, I'll rip stitches if I have to, I guess, but I try to avoid that whenever I can. Okay, so we're going to have these two triangles go here, this one here, and this one, oh, careful, goes right there. Beautiful. Okay, so let me just put this together for you. And again, I'm not a big fan of starting right at the point to start stitching right at the point, but if you have to, right? If that's what it's going to take to make the block work, let's do it. When you're sewing any of the stuff with bias edges, just be gentle with it. You might find that they're all stretching on you, and that could be because of the way you might be handling it in the machine or to and from the machine or something. Just be aware. Be gentle with your fabric. Be nice. All right. Put this together, and I'm going to continue to press towards the dark just like we've done all along. And press gently in a manner that will not give you rippling or pleating. Oh, terrible. You don't want pleats in your stuff. There's that. Let's clip off the thread and the dog ears. Hey, that's a twofer. Get those out of the way. Line it up. Beautiful. Okay. This is the next one. And I'm going to start sewing at this end, this part right here. And I think you also need to be careful when you're pressing points, and because if I press too vigorously, I may end up wrinkling up that point, and then it's just not going to be as accurate. It's hard to get it back to its original condition. So just be careful when you're pressing. There we go, and I'm going to continue to press towards the dark so that, that's going to give us some funny pressing directions and some little awkward stuff to piece together, but I really think in the end result it is worth it. And I'll trim off this guy. And then we put these together. Now, even though it's a triangle, and sometimes I would have trouble lining up triangles and not sure it's going to line up, but you've got this nice square part, and it's going to match along here, which I think if I was really off, doing something wrong and it didn't match along there, that would be a visual clue to tell me. Check that one more time before you sew it. I'm enjoying putting these blocks together because they look really complicated, but it's kind of just a few simple steps, and they turn out so pretty because they're set kind of on point, and they just look so pretty and interesting. I think that's a little bit like That's like good food. You know, if you make a good dish of spaghetti or a really good Caesar salad or something, it might be a little complicated to get some of the stuff together, but in the end, it looks simple and delicious, and you know, people really appreciate that. All right, so here I ended up, how did I decide to press? I, again, pressed towards the dark. So I'm going to flip it over this way and press. And as I've said before, I encourage you to find the different ways of pressing, or maybe a different direction if you're using other colors. A different direction will work better for you, and that's fine. Okay, so there we go. They're two and they're just right. And now we have our next unit. Now it looks like that. So let's put that together. Now these, I'm going to start with these two right here. And I have to say, these are getting really small. And this might be, I'll confess, might be the size of scrap that I don't really keep, because I'm thinking, what can I do with it? But look right there. What can you do with it? You could get a whole pile of these, sit down in a day, and just crank out tons of them, and then match them with something else or put them somewhere. I think that's a great idea, because you get those little bitty things, you're like, I don't know, what am I going to do with it? There's something to do with it. All right. So again, I'm going to start at the corner so I don't chew up the point, especially on these guys, because they're so itty bitty. I'm going to refer, I just want to check and make sure I got that in the right direction. I've been known to get it in the wrong direction sometimes. And this piece, just since it's so small, I try to be really gentle. There you go, cute little piece. Whoop, let's take the dog ears off. All right, so let me just kind of move this around here. I want to make sure that, I'm going to double check my layout here. All right, so if I have these guys right there, this has to go there. No, that's right. Okay. See, I always double check. I'm telling you guys. It's so important to do. Check once, rip it out. All right. Press towards the dark. Oh. Ha-ha. Yay. And I tell you, these are unusual. They're not my typical shapes that I end up using. And so having a guide, a frame of reference there is so important. Okay, I'm putting that one on there. And let's check here. Do I have any points that I need to be concerned about when I'm joining those together? No, I don't. But I'm going to sew it with the seam up, just in case any seams flip over, and I feel like I have a little better control. And press towards the darker fabric. And if you encounter fabric that is really close in color, just decide which way you're going to press and be consistent with that. It really won't matter so much. These are so close in color, but just being consistent with pressing everything there. Let's clip that guy off. We don't need him. So see, this is what I was talking about before, if you don't get the stuff to meet up exactly. So if I was matching this with something, I would match it exactly on the stitching line, not necessarily on that tiny little point. Does that make sense? If you get it on the stitching line, then you get your point. And because that's definitely within the 1/4 of an inch. It's within the 1/8 of an inch, so I can adjust for it without any problem. Did I do it right? Ha, yes, I did. Woohoo! Okay, so now I'm going to put these two together, and I'm going to get my frame of reference here to make sure I put them in there the way that they need to go. Ugh. That'd be just the kind of thing I'd do. All right, as I'm looking at these two together and I want to line them up, it doesn't quite meet, and it's going to be okay. What's going to happen when we sew it together is that's going to end up being a little dog ear, and it'll be fine. So don't worry about that part. Okay, so let me sew it together. And do I have any points I need to be concerned about? I do. So here's what I'm going to do, because I want to make sure I catch that point. I'm going to, you know what, that little corner is rebelling. I'm going to make it lay flat. Okay. I'm going to carefully pin these guys together. The less you mess with bias edge, the happier you're going to be with it. All right, so I can adjust that a little bit as I go. But I have this one to contend with, and everything, it feels like this is slipping and stuff on me. So I'm going to pin it just a little bit because I don't want it to get away from me. That I will adjust, and that's the one I need to pay attention to. So that's the side I'm going to sew on top. If I found a couple of pieces that just did not match at all, and you know, they're about 1/8 of an inch off, I have no problem stretching it, pinning it, glue sticking it to make it go in the right shape. Okay, I'm going to go right over that X. Beautiful. Line this up really well. Okay. Let's see how it looks. Pressing towards the darker fabric. Voila. And sometimes if I can't get something to be as flat as I want it to, I will flip it over. And if I still can't get it to lie flat, I will spritz it with water and I will tell it sit, stay, good block. Okay, you see, we have the little dog ear there, little bit there. I'm going to trim that portion. And now we're going to finish out our partial seam. So I just want you to be able to see that. So I'm going to take this here. See how this block is going to fit in? This unit is going to fit into the block right there. And since we started here, here's where I started my partial seam, and we work around this way, this is the next part to go in, and it needs to go in right there. Now, this is pressed over for when I was doing it the first time around. I don't want that pressed right now. I want it nice and flat for me to put the other thing onto. So I like to press that. If I need to go back and do that, I will, so that it's pretty flat. And I'm going to start right here. And this is a time when I pin. I want it to look just right. I don't want it to be off and wonky. And there's a few things, there's a couple places where we need to make sure we're catching those X's. Now here we have an X, but it's folded under in order to protect our colors, and we can't see it. So I'm going to do that same thing I did before. Take a little pin, put it through that X intersection, and draw that little line. And then I know where the X is. Now the problem is we have this one that's here on the other side, and it's tucked into place. So I'm going to pin real careful. Come on here. It's being wiggly. Okay. All right, pin that into place. And it's going to feel a little awkward. It's not going to lay flat like you're putting a 9 patch together. It's just not going to behave like that, but that's okay. You can adapt. You can do it. We're quilters. We're resilient. I'm going to pin this into place just so it is still. And then I have my other one that's right here. Now I'm going to fold this back. I'm going to take a peek. You see, it's right there that I want to meet. And I can come to the other side, and I can feel where that is, and I can look and see where that is. And so I'm going to put a little mark kind of right there. And I want to be sure to stitch right over that mark. I'm going to make it nice and dark so you can see. And I'm going to pin just before that so things don't shift. There we go. I think with batiks, the pins matter. It helps to have a nice set of good silk pins. I like silk pins that have a glass head. So when I iron them, ooh, that got scrunched up. So when I iron it, I don't accidentally melt the pins if they happen to be in there. All right, this is a little more. There we go. Okay, you want to make sure that everything's flat when we're working in there. And let me adjust it just a little bit more. Okay, that's good. I may be happy with that. Sometimes you have to go back and do a partial seam again. Like when you get everything together, you might have to go back and do a little bit. But I think if you're paying attention to the 1/4 inch seam allowances and you're doing all that stuff, it's not going to be a problem. Okay, so yeah, a good set of silk glass head pins. And I say silk because they're designed to go through silk without leaving a mark. So they're fine and they're sharp and they're not going to damage your fabric. And you just want a pin that's not going to mess around. I remember I was doing a class and the gal was doing it and she was doing everything she was supposed to do. It's just fine. And I looked at it and I said, something's wrong here, something's off. I said, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. So I grabbed one of her pins to try to make an adjustment and try to put it through the fabric. It was like trying to push a table leg to the fabric. No. Here, try these pins and see if that makes a difference. And it did. Sometimes it's just the tool. Okay. Let's press that. Let's see how we did here. Okay. And I opted, let's see, I'm pressing all of them towards this dark bit, the darkest portion here. So let me move around. And sometimes you have to press, repress, do it again, that kind of thing. That's all right. Again, these blocks are just going to be, they're magnificent, aren't they? They're wonderful blocks. And it's worth a little bit of extra work. Okay, see how we did catching those points. Oh, yes. So there we go, right on. I love it. I love it. Okay, now we have to do our last seam, which is going to be this one right here. And as you notice, it's all making sense. I'm going to start stitching just a little bit before this point where I made the knot and continue on. Now I want to make sure I catch any X's, and I have an X right here, and I want to catch. So I'm going to do the pin trick again, drawing a line. And then we're good to go. This part down here, when you put it under your machine, it does get a little fiddly, and sometimes you have to start and stop and do that a few times, but that's all right. Oh, and I forgot, there's one more little seam under here that we need to be aware of. So let me get through this one more little X. Let me get through this one, and then I'll show you how I do it on the fly here, right in front of the machine. So that one was a little, the X and where the seam allowance was, it doesn't give me a perfect 1/4 inch seam. I don't care. I don't care. It's the seam allowance. The seam allowance takes up that extra spot. Okay, so I have just a tiny little bit there in front of the machine. So here I am. I'm going to feel where that is. And I'm going to make a little mark right where it feels to me like they're intersecting. Now I'd encourage you to do the same section, the same unit, the same patch, whatever, the same part over and over again until you've completed your list. completed the amount that you need to do. And do that before you go on to something else. I do like to make a test block, so I'll test the block out and make sure that I can get it and that it's working. And then I'll do the same step over and over again. Because I think the more you can do that, the more it reinforces your skills, it makes you better at what you're doing, it helps you to learn, and the more you're more consistent. And that's, I think, what we're going for. Okay, so let's see how this looks. You can't see yet. Not unveiling yet. Hang on. Press this direction. I have to say, working through this, oh, no, wait. Oh, yeah, okay. I think I pressed different directions there. But I have a solution. I'll show you. I'm not sure what I did there, but it should be going in the other direction. Oops, I goofed. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a little snip here in the seam allowance. Don't snip the thread. Don't snip a hole. Don't snip underneath. I'm going to take the little snip there, and I'm going to fold that so that the majority of it goes in the direction I want it to. There we go. There we go. Okay. So putting these blocks together, I have to tell you, it has given me a really strong appreciation for a well-pressed block, because these can all intersect and they can just look so beautiful. I say as I'm fixing my mistake. All right, there we are. Ta-da! Oh, let's see, got a little thing that wants to pop up there, but spritz, press it out, it'll be fine. So then we add our corners on, just the same as we've done before. And our block is on point. There's your finished one. Ta-da! Isn't that great? I love them. I'm loving these blocks. All right, so there you go. That's your Double Aster block. I love them. I'm kind of sad to see them in. These have been a lot of fun for me. Now, the next thing we're going to do, I'm going to show you just a little bit about how to put the flower border together. And there's some previous blocks. So be sure to follow the order that it has in the pattern of the order that the things go together with, because that's something to watch out for. But we're going to put sashing in between in the proper order. So let me just add that here, and I can kind of show you some of the things that I'm on guard for and aware of when I do this. Because we have pressed towards the dark, I have my points. They are pretty easy to see there. And because I pressed these open, if you'll recall, then that makes it a little harder to see where that point is going to match. So what I do in that scenario where I pressed it open, you have to kind of just guesstimate where those are going to be, where they're going to match up. Let me see if I have a better one. So that one matches up there, but these are just a little bit different because it doesn't quite match. So what I like to do on these, I kind of look at the underside and I can kind of see where it is, see where they line up, and then transfer that to the back. So I'm kind of looking at it. Let me take a pin here. I'm going to put a pin right about through there. And then come on this other side, and then I'm going to make a little mark. That's going to be fine. And then I have that one there. So I take my sashing strip, and normally I like to have the bigger thing on the bottom and then add the smaller piece to it. But these points are too important. I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to start here and go all the way through. Now, if you, this is important here, if you find that your sashing is bigger than your block, because maybe you've made a mistake in the block, maybe you've had some struggles with it and things didn't quite go together right, then, and they're different sizes, you can stretch the block a little bit so it'll go the whole distance. And that is perfectly fine. In fact, I think that's advantageous in a quilt where there's a lot of triangles, a lot of bias edges, to have sashing to kind of hold everything in place. It's the last chance to really square up that block in case you've made a mistake. All right, so I'm aiming right towards that little dot and making sure I get it. Fix that so my stuff doesn't flip up on me. Oh, I found another one. I found another one where I needed a little X. So I'm kind of gonna, while I'm right here, I'm gonna eyeball that where that goes and hold my finger on there. I think we're gonna go right over the top. And then this one too, little X right there. I forgot, I was a little excited to do this. I got too ahead of myself. And you'll notice my seam allowances are not always the same because the point is the point. That's the most important part. So I'm going to feel this here. You know what? I think I'm going to take my little pencil because I can get a nice dark mark. Easy to see. And put it right on there. Beautiful. And line things up, and you'll find, I mean, the goal is, of course, to make everything as straight and as perfect as possible, but that is hard to do sometimes. Okay. And you might have thought when you saw this stuff, you thought, oh, well, that's just the sash, and that's easy to do. Well, it's really something that you do need to take your time on. And because it is darker, we're again going to press towards the sashing at this point. So I think what I found the best way to do that is to press it from the top like this. I've warmed up the seam, I've flattened the thread as much as I can, and I'm going to press towards the top. All right, so let's look at this. Let's look at how I did kind of doing it on the fly and not as much prep as I usually like to do. These ones are pretty good. These are not as spot on as I would like. So I didn't cut them off, so I didn't make, you know, I guess it'd be a parallelogram or something. I didn't make them into parallelograms, but they aren't as crisp as I would like. So my goal, what I would say to myself on the next time, okay, let's figure it out. What do I need to do to improve that for next time? I'm a big proponent of let's move forward, not going back and figuring out and ripping everything out again for a couple reasons. One, that can get really discouraging. It doesn't always help you figure out what you're doing wrong. And two, the more you rip out the bias edges, the worse they're going to get. And at some point, the integrity of the patch is gone, and you're just going to have to start over with it. So if I was doing this again, I would say, okay, what do I need to do to better line those up? What can I try? Different techniques, extra pins, clips, glue stick in the seam allowance to make those stay right in place. Whatever you need to try to make it work, do that. Be sure to try that. So then you would continue to add on the blocks just according to the pattern instructions. Be sure you get them in the right order. Or, you know, you might try a different order and find out something you like better or something. Who knows? Be creative. Go for it. So you continue to add that and make all of the flower borders that are going to go along the outside. All right, that's it for this time. Next time, we're going to talk about the checkerboard border that goes around the medallion. And that's it for now. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next time. This episode of Dream Big Block of the Month is brought to you by Hoffman Fabrics, made to inspire since 1924.